And we're back. Welcome to No Direction, the Pathfinder news, reviews, and interviews podcast. I'm Vanessa Hoskins.
And I'm Luis Loza.
And we're here today to give you a sneak preview, rather, of the Knights of Lastwall book from the Lost Omens line. We're specifically going to look at Chapter 3, the Knights of Lastwall options, which is where most of the player-facing stuff is, which is super cool. Luis, have you heard about this book? What do you know about it?
This book just randomly showed up on my computer today. This is the first time I'm looking at it. No, that's not true. Hey, full disclosure, I worked on this book. I'm a in my day job, I happen to be working as senior developer at Paizo, working on the Pathfinder Lost Omens line. So I know quite a bit about this book. I outlined this book and I signed it, and I kind of molded it and got it ready to go for people to read here in the next coming weeks. So yeah, cool. I know this book pretty well. Also, Brian Costello of No Direction fame contributed to this book, and a few other people that I'm sure you've seen around these parts did a little bit of work here and there. So that's awesome. I know quite a bit about this book and figured let's share the good stuff from Knights of Lastwall.
Would you
lore
say,
is great.
So you would say, really quick, you would say that you are a biased person to talk about this book.
Yes, which is why we're doing a preview and not a review. We're just showing off things. We're just talking about them and not necessarily saying, this is the best book, 10 out of 10. Give Paizo your money, buy 10 copies.
I mean, it is the best book and you should buy 10 copies. So yeah, we're going to talk about Chapter 3, Knights of Lastwall options with... Can I just say really quick, I love the art that y'all got for this book. It looks beautiful with these two-page full spread, beautiful pieces of art that just really get you in the feeling of being a knight and being like boots on the ground at one of these locations. And it's very cool. I just love it.
Yeah, I'm happy to go into a little bit about how this book got put together before we go into our options.
Oh my gosh, please do. That would be great.
This book is now the second Lost Omens book that is covering a large organization in the setting. The last one was a Pathfinder Society guide from 2019. And I think 2019, 2020, I can't remember exactly. It was earlier on.
Well, then it also got delayed, I think, with some other stuff. So yeah.
There's a lot of weird stuff that happened.
The schedule.
It was 2020 when they came out.
That sounds right.
And the book for the Pathfinder Society guide had a lot of work to do. It had to cover as much of, we had over 10 years of PFS scenarios and history, as well as other stuff that came into the setting that wasn't part of the organized play. And, it had to do a lot of work to also introduce it to a lot of people and give you new options and cover a lot of stuff and tell you about every lodge and all the cool venture captains and the history and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And that was a great time because I got to work a lot with the organized play team and bring all that in and have a really cool book. I think all things considered, there's just a lot of history and a lot of great knowledge. I got to tap Linda Zayas Palmer, and I got to tap Mike Sayer and John Compton, people that have been involved with this for many years.
Cool.
And then I had to cram it all into 128 pages. Great book, had a good time with that. And then the time came, we decided, let's do another organization book. Let's look at the Knights of Lastwall. It's going to line up with Book of the Dead and other stuff going on pretty well. And suddenly I was so free. I had so much more space to work with.
Yeah, because we didn't know that much about the Knights, right? Like we knew that they were a nation near Ustalov, just south of there, and that they were basically trying to do double duty with keeping the Whispering Tyrant locked away. Good job with that, by the way. And with keeping all the orcs in Belkzen, from invading other lands, because they like to maraud something stereotypes that are bad. And the Knights of Lastwall are like, we're going to be the last bastion of humanity, keeping the savage world. Yeah, okay, sure, fine. But we didn't know much about them, other than those sort of generic things. What's the rest of the country doing? What's happening here?
Yeah, and then they all died, so it doesn't matter.
They all died. So what do you do with an organization that just got completely decimated?
You get to start over, which is great. Cool. You get a new jumping off point, and that was one of the things we got to do early on in the planning for second edition lore wise, setting wise, right? The rules were already well into full design towards the playtest and stuff. But there were a lot of decisions that were being made by the time I came on as a developer. It's
Cool.
we're figuring out player companions and campaign setting books. Great. But also we have to look forward to the future where we get to kind of steer the ship a bit. Eleanor, Farron, and I, my fellow senior developer, get to steer the ship, come up with a brand new book line and figure out some of the major changes. And that included, well, we know Lastwall is going to get blown up, but does that mean it's completely wipe off the face of Galarian?
Right.
Maybe not. Maybe a lot of people survive. And that's from the rubble and the ashes of Lastwall rise the Knights of Lastwall. They realize, hey, sitting on our thumbs just waiting for bad stuff to happen is maybe not the approach we want to take. We want to go out there and fight evil. And I got to kind of dictate a lot of the ideas of what are the Knights up to, what kind of things are they doing early on there, but then really dive deep into them when I was outlining this book and deciding, okay, well, I need to fill 128 pages and I know here's a lot of the basics that we've established, but when it comes time to ask for like specific NPCs or important quests or missions that they're on or part of the history, a lot of that wasn't established. And I got to say, well, maybe you can include an NPC that's, you know, someone that's really good at taming animals and creating new animal companions for people, and someone that's, you know, this or that, and like establishing a lot of that and then handing it off to the authors to work on, which was great, a good time, and also really exciting because it's not something I've had to really do before. A lot of the time working as a developer, I've established stuff and expand on it, but a lot of it has quite a bit of prior history. Here we had kind of a nugget of an idea and a little bit of information, and this is where we're really going to flesh it out. So it's been a really fun time watching this come together and kind of grow, because we did a little bit of this with the character guide, but now we're giving you that full deep dive.
So we already have some questions coming in from chat. Chat, of course, is the Twitch chat. We are live on Twitch on Monday nights at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time and 6 o'clock Pacific. And our first question is from Lava Being, who asks a two-part question. Who was left alive from the organization and why aren't they dead?
Well, I mean, we don't really give a full explanation as to how everyone survived that did survive. The people that are alive are the ones that are mentioned in this book. Just because people aren't mentioned doesn't necessarily mean they're dead. We just didn't take the time to shine a spotlight on them and say, here's what they're up to. There's a lot of previous Knights from Lastwall and other fiction and stuff that could have been featured here, but we also kind of wanted to break some new ground and introduce new people. So if they're alive, they, you know, there's a lot of gods backing up the Knights of Lastwall. Maybe they interceded. They had pretty strong castles. Maybe they just got very lucky. Or maybe they were even away from wherever the most damage was happening, right? Like, so there's a lot of ways you can explain how they survived. And if we feel the need to tell those stories, we definitely will. But we want to kind of keep it open for people to say, I was there right alongside Caliburn Iomade when she survived. And we can tell that story at our table, or I can write fiction for Infinite, or however you want to handle it.
Awesome. Another question from chat is Jaina B asking, is it really Lastwall anymore now that the wall kind of fell? And I actually have a follow-up question, which is that the Knights of Lastwall is the name of the book and how they're referred to. Previously, they were the Knights of Ozum. What can you tell me about this change in nomenclature?
So the Knights of Ozum had been around for quite a while. And they're the ones they were the ones that were part of the Shining Crusade against Tarbafon and all that. And those knights, I think, were still around in the sense that a lot of those knights and their descendants were the ones that established Lastwall. But when you think about it, the Shining Crusade and all that stuff was over for quite some time. And the shift to the vigilance of Lastwall is a different type of knight. You're training for different things. You're out to do different things. You're still going to fight evil and stuff if it rises up, but you're not actively out crusading for that. You're keeping watch. All right. And that, I think, was already kind of a shift. And by the time Lastwall becomes the Gravelands, you have another monumental shift. And that's why there's another name change. You decide, all right, well, here's who we were before and here's who we were when we were with Lastwall, and Lastwall's gone, so we have to be different people again and decide our new future and what we're looking to do. So I think part of it is just like a testimony to show like everyone, we are different people. We're not necessarily the knights that were living at Lastwall. We're the knights we're what's left of Lastwall, and we've decided to take up arms and go stop the fight. And it's just kind of a declaration of their mission and intent.
Very cool. I'm going to ask you a question about this book that I often like to. Why this book and why now?
Well, like I mentioned earlier, it lined up pretty well with Book of the Dead. There's a lot of undead stuff going on. Who do we have that would be into undead? Well, a lot of groups, but maybe we have other groups that are also all about stopping these undead, and that seemed like a great time. We also had an unofficial, like we unofficially called our shot with the character guide. We have 5 featured organizations: Firebrands, Hell Knights, Knights of Lastwall, Pathfinder Society, and Magambia. In that book, they each get, I think 6 to 12 pages each to discuss them, kind of to show you 5 different groups that you could join up as players and have something that you could do that probably covers the kind of adventures you want to do. If you want to be a knight in shining armor, go to Lastwall. If you want to be just an explorer, you can go to the Pathfinder Society. If you want to go around help people or learn magic, there's a Magambia, so on and so forth. And after doing the Pathfinder Society guide, we said maybe we could do another one of these books. I don't know if we're going to do all 5, just because some of these have prior history. The Hell Knights had a whole book in first edition that's still relevant for the most part. But the Knights of Lastwall were brand new, and we wanted to show why they were so different from the people that lived at Lastwall. And timing worked out. And I personally was just like, that seems like a fun book. I'd like to do that organization, figure out knights in shining armor and our take as what Pathfinder's knights are up to. And I thought that worked out. And seeing as I'm kind of half in charge of the book line, no one questioned me, and then we got to make that book happen.
Well, I think it's a really cool idea. Being a fantasy staple, knights in shining armor are definitely a thing when you think about medieval or Renaissance style fantasy games. And one thing I really like about this, and we'll get into it once we start looking at the options, is that the idea of what it means to be a knight isn't just riding around on a horse in full plate with a lance. It's really explored in a lot of different ways, and I think that's something that's really refreshing and interesting. And I don't know, it's just, I think it's a very important book, like you said, to include in the Galarian setting, and to give players who want to play sort of a member of a knightly order that's, well, not a Hell Knight, but this shining example of goodness, and give them a place to exist in the world and some fun player options and backstory and such to work from. So I'm glad it exists.
Yeah, and I think that idea is actually put forth very, very blatantly with the very first sidebar that you see even in the introduction for the chapter, which is the all classes welcome sidebar, and says you don't have to necessarily be a champion or a cleric or a fighter to be a knight of Lastwall. You can be a spellcaster, you can be a rogue, you can be an investigator, right? There's lots of ways to play as someone who wants to do good, fight evil, and stop undead.
Yeah, all classes are welcome. I see that there, and that's fantastic. It's like, champion, but also literally anybody else. One of the call-outs that I thought was interesting that people might not think about is like a druid. And they talk about how druids are actually very important to the knights, because druids can help heal the actual land that has been corrupted by evil and corrupted by undeath and in just the negative energy that permeates everything. And druids are instrumental in reclaiming that for living creatures. So
Casino Warlock jokes in the chat are all archetypes welcome in Eyes of the Book of the Dead, because there's some archetypes like the vampire archetype or the ghost archetype, and I will say yes, there is even an NPC among the knights featured in this book who is a vampire.
Oh my goodness, that is cool.
Good. So
well, that kind of mirrors Monley 360's question: how funky would it be for a PC from this book being with one of the Book of the Dead, both the ones that like and don't like the undead? So you're saying that it's possible.
It's entirely possible. There's a lot of explanation in the earlier chapters about how you join the Knights of Lastwall, and at this point the knights aren't going to be very picky. If you can't mount a horse and ride around in full plate,
right,
that's okay, because we need all the help we can get. And there's a lot of explanation as to how you might join up and do something like be a tailor or be a cook among the Knights of Lastwall and still be considered an important part of the group. Or you might decide, hey, I'm a skeleton that rose up out of the rubble of Lastwall, and I used to be a knight, and I want to keep being a knight. And everyone might be like, this is weird, but he's not immediately like attacking us. And
So I
maybe sit
guess I'll
down
help. Yeah.
and figure out what's up with this skeleton and realize, hey, well, Lord Tibia is decided to join the fight.
Yeah, Lord Tibia. Jaina B in chat came up with that exact idea. So apparently great minds and all that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, that's really cool. Shall we start digging into chapter 3 and looking at some of these player options? I know people are just dying for it. I flashed our first spread already, which has our introduction with all classes welcome, but it also has our backgrounds. Yes. And so there's a few in there that you would expect and a couple that I honestly didn't. Why don't you tell us about some of the backgrounds that you have put in here?
So good friend Ryan Costello wrote these backgrounds.
Really?
Which is why you end up with kind of clever names like Once Bitten for one of these background. Yeah, a lot of these are just kind of your basic backgrounds that you would find in the core rule book that cover your ability boosts and your skill training and a skill feat.
Sure.
But they give you some of the flavor that ties into the Knights of Lastwall. I mentioned earlier, you could be a cook or a tailor, and that's what's known as the pillars among the Knights of Lastwall. They're the important things kind of holding everything up, and you could decide to be a pillar. You can contribute to the Knights of Lastwall in ways that aren't just combat or the typical adventurer stuff. So these backgrounds kind of explain maybe how you joined up. You don't have to take one of these to be a Knight of Lastwall, of course, but there's just additional flavor that helps lean into that. And then of course we get some cool rare backgrounds. I think the one that I like most is Tyrant Witness, which you saw him break free and what it did to Lastwall, what he did to Lastwall when he blew it all up. And somehow you've developed the ability to cast Disrupt Undead as a result of that. You just have this power. You're like, I'm here to stop the undead. Let's do it.
What I like about that is it reminds me of first edition and how there was an option for clerical powers that just come from you, right? Or even oracle powers as well, where it's like you can just channel divine energy because your belief is so strong. And this is really interesting. And that's like you survived such a harrowing thing, such a terrible event that you are able to tap into the antithesis of that power that destroyed your homeland, your country, and turn it right back against them. And I think that's a really cool idea for a character. And I can understand why it's a rare background, considering it gives you a cantrip, an innate cantrip. But still, I just think that's a really neat story to tell.
Yeah.
Lava Being says the positive energy needs to go somewhere, right? Sure. So if you're looking at this from a balance perspective, you have this surge, this surging like upwelling of a negative energy, and that positive energy should go somewhere. If it's not being canceled out, maybe it's just moving, and maybe it infuses you as you escape as one of the few survivors. So that's pretty cool. All right. We also have what I think is cool is, so instead of new archetypes like we saw in Book of the Dead and some other books, what we end up with are a lot of extensions of existing archetypes. So the character guide had several different knight archetypes in it: Knight Vigilant, Knight Reclaimant, etc. And this adds a lot of new feats for those archetypes. What was the design decision in adding to existing archetypes?
It didn't make sense to just create new archetypes when a lot of the material we wanted was already covered with the existing archetypes. This is the thing we did with the Pathfinder Society guide, is we had the sword mastery for the swords, and we had one for the scrolls, and one for I can't remember the third one now.
Maybe Chad will help us out.
Whatever. There were 3 archetypes for the Pathfinder Society guide. We decided it makes a lot more sense to just add to those and give you extra toys to play with for those, rather than come up with a whole brand new archetype and then decide like, oh, well, I liked Knight Vigilant for this and this, but then I'd have to take, I don't know, the mounted archer or whatever. Yeah. And sword spells and scrolls. Thank you.
Sword spells and scrolls. Yeah.
So rather than, take something brand new and then split it all up and then make it harder to play with. It just wanted to reward people who were already going into archetypes that made a lot of sense. So yeah, we had the Knight Vigilant, Knight Reclaimant in the character guide. We had the Lastwall Sentry in the world guide. And the other archetypes that existed in the APG as well, we'll see in the future. But rather than it just makes a lot more sense to add to them, and it gives you
instead of reinventing the wheel. Yeah.
Instead of reinventing the wheel, and it's also less of a load on players and GMs, I think, to understand like, oh, this is all part of the same theme, and I don't have to flip through 20 different archetypes. I only have 10 different archetypes to flip through or whatever. And it also lets us, play with some of the new tech, if you will, that has come out between the character guide and now. There's new spells, there's new abilities, there's skill feats and all this other stuff that you can now include as additional options for players that didn't exist before. Now we know how to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, let's start diving into them. The first one up is the Knight Vigilant feats, and it gives a lot of sort of magic-y divine abilities for your character. And one of the things I am excited about is a way to get lay on hands without being a champion. So as an 8th level feat, you can get divine healing that literally just gives you lay on hands and a focus pool if you don't have one, which is cool.
Yeah. And the Knight Vigilants are kind of tied to the Shining Sentinels, which is one of the two main factions. And the Shining Sentinels are kind of like the big armor clad, will guard other people, very into shields because they can use them to block and defend other people. So there's a lot of shield stuff going on here, like the phalanx formation, which means that you know how to stay out of the way of other people's attacks and know how to fight while still guarded, or the instant armor that you can use to create a connection to your armor and just like summon it at any time whenever you need.
That sounds pretty so fun. Cool.
Yeah,
I want to be in the middle of like a bar brawl where they're like, this is beneath me, I am not getting invested in this, and then all of a sudden like the town gets attacked and they just stand up and their armor is like whoosh right onto their body, and as they march out to defend the town, because it's a 10th level feat. I imagine that they're not they're not phased by a bar brawl, but I just love that idea of like, oh, real danger is here, and the armor just appears.
Yeah, and I mean, if you want your fantasy Iron Man itch scratch, then that really does it, I think.
If you want it like in a divine way, because otherwise you have an inventor to give it to you in a tech way.
That's true. Yeah, there are different ways to play out your fantasies with Pathfinder. That's what we offer here.
Now I want to see multiple types of fantasy Iron Man builds all in the same campaign together as they all armor up instantly, and they're just like.
I mean, if you think about it, Tony Stark has like a million different suits, so that's just a million different ways to interpret how you play each of the suits.
Should we start to look at these, and instead of the Batman test of old, we start doing the Iron Man test? How is the Knight Vigilant like Iron Man?
Oh man, so the Batman test is hard enough. I think an Iron Man test is just like, yeah, that's cruel, because I'd have to be the one figuring that out.
That's true. All right, well, moving on from that. Yeah, there's some really cool stuff in here. They also have some interesting capstone 20th level feats, including Tower Shield Mastery, where you like are so good at using a tower shield, you're constantly quickened and can only use it to take cover behind your tower shield after you have raised it. So it basically gives you that free take cover, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Helping out your feat stuff. Anything else you want to see about the Knight Vigilant before we move on?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I want to bring attention to the Vigilant Benediction feat, which is basically, hey, you want some spell casting without having to get into spell casting? Here's a way to get an innate spell. And if you happen to worship a specific deity, they might give you a different type of spell entirely. So normally you could decide, oh, I want to be able to cast, I don't know, status, and you can do that with whichever god you're worshiping. But if you happen to be worshiping Sarenrae can grant you the ability to cast Wall of Fire instead, which is just a way to like play a little bit with like the tools and toys that clerics have without having to be a full cleric, which I think is just kind of a fun way to express your divine connections, your religion, without having to go full into like, I gotta then multi-class into cleric to get all this extra stuff. No, there's ways to do this now.
That's cool.
And then I just really like the keep up the good fight. The name of that feat is just great flavor. It's keep fighting and stuff, and I think it's just, I don't know, sometimes feat names get really, really clever, and I think this is one of those fun ones.
Lead the way is also a really clever one. As you're moving forward, leaving an opening for others to follow. So yeah, just being able to give you clever names, I always think is great because it helps you really remember it. It gives you a very good mental picture of what this feat does. So that is really neat.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. All right, so the next one up is the Knight Reclaimant, which is the other one that came from the character guide.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that one?
So Knight Reclaimant's tied to the Crimson Reclaimers, the other major faction within the Knights of Lastwall, and they're all about going out there and just getting the job done, taking the fight to the undead. And if they happen to be able to like save people along the way, that's great. They're the ones that take on like super dangerous missions and just dive in headfirst to stuff. Mm-hmm. They're like the Green Berets, I guess, if you will, of the Knights of Lastwall. They just
special forces
go in and stuff, and you kind of have to be almost inducted in, because to be a Knight Reclaimant, you have to swear the Crimson Oath and get power from a mysterious benefactor or benefactors.
That doesn't sound suspicious at all.
And you get cool powers, right? You get
then it must be worth it. Something warlocks in another game. Yeah, okay.
You get a lot of cool abilities, abilities to cast cool, powerful spells to destroy your enemies and stuff like that. And there's more of that here. You're all about stealth and reconnaissance, but also like blowing stuff up once you find it.
There's some really cool options in here. Speaking of getting cool powers, there is a 12th level feat. It's rare, which I find interesting because nothing else in this archetype is even uncommon.
The archetype itself is already uncommon.
Well, so sure.
Everything else is.
But it's like, this is interesting. So it's called For Love for Lightning, and it gives you a focus spell that you just like plunge your sword into the ground and it shoots lightning at enemies within 30 feet every round until you pull it out, which is so cool. Like just the visual of that, of like, I am creating a no, you cannot pass zone that will shock the heck out of you. And it just keeps going every round for up to a minute. So you create this zone of, if you come in here, you might get hurt, which I think is so cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And the reason it's rare is because you kind of have to learn that power from the leader of the Crimson Reclaimers, who is Clarith Iomadar. And to earn that, you have to go on a special mission and help Clarith out, and then she'll teach you how to do this, because Clarith seems to be much more in tune with the power of the Crimson Oath than anyone else, which some people find suspicious, some people find inspiring, but she's the one that can show you how to do this cool lightning power.
Put me down for suspicious.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool. Also, Gina B says, sounds witchy, Crimson Oath patron.
I think that would be a cool thing. We don't have any witch patrons in here, but the moment you said that, I'm just like, oh my gosh, we should have done that.
We should have done that. That's a good idea, Gina B.
So that's perfect infinite fodder. Someone who wants to go do that, please go do so.
Yep, absolutely. That would be very cool to see that. This is once again with the awesome feat names. We have their capstone feat for this archetype is the Tyrant Falls, which is a 2 action, and it looks like while it's active, you gain the following. You get a ton of benefits. 1 minute.
You get ton of benefits. Yeah. Superpower. You turn on overdrive.
Yeah, once per day, and you just get all these things.
Yeah, and you can cast invoke the Crimson Oath, which is a spell from the character guide, just kind of at will. You get resistance equal to half your level. You get reach. You get extra 2d6 positive or negative damage, whichever you need. So you just like turn on your limit break effectively.
Right.
And a fun thing about the name of the feat is the Tyrant Falls is the last line of the Crimson Oath that you recite. So you're like, you recite your Crimson Oath, and then you say the Tyrant Falls. You hold your sword up, and then you become super powered and go to fight whatever it is that needs, I guess, your limit break or your chance or whatever to take down.
That is so cool. Another one in here that I think was worthy of shouting out is Hilt Hammer. It's a simple feat, but it makes 100% sense, which is that you can take any melee weapon you're using, and it gains the versatile bashing trait. So it can deal bashing damage by just like hitting him with that hilt. And I think that is so cool because that is definitely a thing you would want to do. And there's a feat that does it. It's 10th level, which seems fairly high, but considering the level of the archetype, it sort of makes sense that it would be higher in there. But I just think it's handy because Pathfinder 2nd Edition has really embraced needing various damage types to fight different types of foes. So pretty cool. Lava Being says to the Crimson Oath one, something power of Gray Skull. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. The next one we have is the Lastwall Sentry feats. So it's looking at this is the one from the World Guide.
Yeah. So you might have been someone that was part of Lastwall or wanted to still like defend the people of the Gravelands, but not necessarily have been a member of the Knights of Lastwall. We didn't have that right exactly when the World Guide came out, but you know, there's still people who are trained to fight undead and prepare for this whole situation. And they still have that training. So there's a lot of these feats that represent that kind of thing. You're really good at like maneuvering around undead and eluding their grasp and stuff. And so you have things like you can bless your shield to give yourself ghost touch at any time that you need, because you got to fight ghosts, or you have a specific training with undead that once you like recognize what kind of undead it is, that training kicks in and you get bonuses to recall knowledge and things like that. So you're always kind of on the know about any undead. You're kind of ready for that, and you don't necessarily have to be a Knight of Lastfall to be a Lastfall Sentry. So if you wanted to expand on this and keep playing with this without having the character that's the Knight of Lastfall, there's still options for you, and that's what we wanted to present here.
Yeah. And I do like that it definitely calls out that the Sentry's abilities are useful in all undead campaigns. So if you're fighting something in Ustalav or down in Geb or something like that, where you're fighting a lot of undead, this would be a really good archetype. And because you can grit new archetypes after 3 feats, new multi-class archetypes, I should say, new dedications, this might work well with the Undead Slayer. I'm not sure from the Book of the Dead.
Yeah, probably that's probably a good combination there. Yeah, you can be a very skillful or kind of armor focused undead slayer if you don't want to necessarily be the one in the leather armor with a whip style of undead hunter. Very
cool. Any call out feats or abilities that you want to talk about? Because I've got a couple.
Sure. I'm a big fan of the flashing shield. You can hit someone with your shield, and then as a trigger, or sorry, you block with your shield, and as a trigger, you use it as a free action, and suddenly as you block it, your shield glows with light, and the undead takes a bunch of damage. So even in your defensive options, you're able to keep attacking undead and keep fighting them. So there's cool ways to do that. And Sacred Armaments is a level 6 feat. It's just any weapon you wield, you get ghost touch. You're ready for any ghosts that you run into.
Yeah, I thought that one was really neat. There's a ghost touch option later in this book that I find super intriguing, and we will get to. But for now, I wanted to talk. There's a 10th level feat that the Lastwall Sentry can get called Grave Sight, which gives you the ability to sense undead. You get sense undead as an imprecise sense with a range of 60 feet, which is so cool. Now, because it's imprecise, you just know that they're around. And that to me is super intriguing as well. If you have like a master undead disguising themselves as a living creature and infiltrating your council or something, you can show up to that council meeting and be like, oh, someone here is undead. Like I've just got this feeling, you know? And I think that's really cool.
Yeah. I think there was a first edition feat that I think did something similar that I used for an undead hunter. I'm like, this is the kind of thing that I think is cool. Just knowing that like chill runs down your spine. Oh, there's something here. I got to go fight it. I got to go take it down. It's always fun.
Oh yeah, those are fantastic storytelling moments as well, especially if you like entered the crowded room with the council or something and you're like, well, it could be someone in the crowd, could be the council, we don't know, and it just gives your player, as a GM, you can give your player a quick heads up that like something is not quite right now. Like there is undead somewhere near here and there should not be, and it's just like, oh, interesting. Kitsune Warlock says, "Oh no, am I undead?" Dustin. Some other cool things. Yeah, a lot of shield feats, blessed shield, things like that. Yeah, if you want to be a shield specialist, there's a lot of really cool things here. Non-lethal takedown, which I think is useful in a lot of campaigns where, you don't have to just murder everything you attack, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What's that?
I was say the other one that stands out to me is Thwart Evil, which just as a reaction once per day can just, even if you're not a spellcaster, be able to counterspell a spell that an undead is using and put a stop to that just because you're so dedicated to putting a stop to undead.
Yeah, and you use your religion modifier for counteract, which is really cool. So if you're like, no, I am super religious, I'm devout, I'm a master of religion, you can just be like, no,
And
don't
you don't
do
have
that.
to be a spellcaster. You're very dedicated.
Oh, that is so neat. That is so neat. All right. Next we have other archetypes. I want you to tell me about this because this threw me for a loop. Like we've seen 3 different archetypes that are getting more attention and additional feats, which is super cool. But then you have other archetypes with badass art, by the way. Cool knight in a wheelchair, love it. And there's a lot of feats here that are look like for specific. I'm not even sure. So it lists, I'm trying to figure out how this worked. And I must admit, I skimmed this section because I was like, I'm just going to have Luis explain it to me.
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of archetypes already that kind of fill in the roles for a lot of the stuff you'd be doing as a knight though. So there's like an archetype, I don't know, the medic archetype for people who want to go out and heal other people. There is the bastion archetype, which is all about fighting the shields. There's the cavalier, which seems like a perfect archetype for knights. The marshal is a perfect archetype for knights. And I thought it didn't make sense to give you a brand new archetype again when a lot of these are just doing what we need to do already in terms of the stuff that you'd want as a player.
Gotcha.
You might want to be a cavalier, you might want to be mounted. Cavalier will cover 90% of what you want. You just want an extra little bit to play with as a knight of Lastwall because all the things you already want to do are already in the APG archetype. Let's just give you an extra little bit of flavor. So that's what we did. We took a bunch of the APG archetypes that already existed. In this case, archer, assassin, bastion, cavalier, herbalist, marshal, medic, scout, and Viking, and gave them an extra feat or two just to give them a little bit more of Knight of Lastwall flavor, a very specific bit of rules, options, and mechanics that only Knights of Lastwalls who happens to be a scout or a Viking or a medic can do. So the idea being that like the Knights of Lastwall have developed very specific techniques, very specific training that they use for their missions and the things they do that any medic could figure out how to do if they joined the Knights of Lastwall.
Gotcha. So rather than trying to list, and you do in the prerequisites, but rather than trying to list there, you have sort of a little index at the beginning, a little table of contents that says, by the way, the thing, if you're an archer that you want to look at here is the 6th level feat staggering fire. Like that's for you. That's what we put in here.
Yep, exactly.
Pretty cool. All right. Well, there's a neat spread on that. That's pretty cool. Once again, some really cool names. A 4th level feat called Angel of Vindication if you're an assassin.
You can assassinate undead. So, you just take your weapon and add some extra damage to try to put an end to undead. And if it's something like a ghost that can rejuvenate, maybe you're very, very good at killing them and can kill them once and for all and put an end to them.
Yeah, that is really cool. That is scary assassins. Yeah. There's one called Push Back the Dead, which is probably the opposite of Bring Out Your Dead. Like, don't bring it to us. No, push it out. Like, which is a 1 action feat for marshals, which gives you bonuses against saves and resistance to damage from undead creatures equals your charisma. So you're so cool as a marshal that they can't hurt you.
Yeah.
That is cool.
I like the preventative treatment for the medic, where it's just like, you're going to go into a fight with, I don't know, ghouls who have paralysis, right?
Oh, sure.
And you can basically treat people in advance and say, hey, right before we go into this room that's full of ghouls or whatever, I'm going to give you this concoction or get you ready in this particular way. You roll basically your treat condition check in advance to counteract this thing. And that's represented by this preparation that you've done. And then if that person then contracts paralysis or whatever happens, your check is already pre-rolled and they're not affected by it because you did some pre-treatment.
That is amazing, by the way. I think that is so cool. Because that happens all the time. Like you said, fighting ghouls or fighting whatever you're fighting. Like, oh, there's a bunch of zombies in there. You're like, well, let's not become a zombie, or they're gonna have filth fever or something. And you can like, you know what? Let's inoculate you against filth fever and inoculate you against zombie plague or whatever. And like, and you can go in and you can fight them and have a little bit of reassurance that you're not just gonna immediately fall victim to their terrible diseases and things. It's very cool. All right. Any other ones you want to point out in this list? There's so many that are so cool.
The other thing I want to point out is earlier at the beginning you mentioned the little list of all the archetypes. The Bastion has a few different feats that aren't listed here because they're feats that already exist. This is playing with some of the existing tech that I mentioned earlier in the Advanced Player's Guide. If you take an archetype, it'll sometimes list some feats that you can also take as an archetype feat that already existed and made sense for that class. So there's a lot of archery feats for archer that isn't part of the archer archetype.
Right.
They were technically
but they're in fighter or ranger or something.
Ranger and fighter, yeah. But you can still take them as an archer and they count towards your dedications and stuff. So Bastion gets a couple of those because there were a few shield-based feats for Knights of Lastwall from the character guide that were originally champion and fighter only, and now the Bastion has access to them. So you don't have to necessarily be a champion or a fighter to gain access to the Everstand stance or the Everstand strike.
That is awesome. Yeah, so we have at 4th level Agile Shield Grip from this very book, the Everstand stance, like you mentioned, from the character guide, and at 6th level you can get the Everstand Strike, also from the character guide, and at 8th level Drive Back, which is in this section. Very cool.
If you're a Bastion, you get a lot to play with at this point.
Very nice. Lots of Bastion love. The next section sort of works the same. So it's just called Nightly Training. And is that a dwarven half-orc? That looks like a dwarven half-orc, that art.
I think that it's just the color of the light and stuff.
Oh, okay.
At least when I ordered that piece, it was just a dwarf priest of Shellen. So
I choose to believe that it's a dwarven half-orc because
I choose to support you in your beliefs.
I like uncoupling half-orc and half-elf from human-only ancestry. I just think it's very cool to have these different combinations of peoples that may have had offspring. So the Nightly Training has a lot of things for specific or for multiple specific classes, which I thought was cool. And it's done in a slightly different way. It's organized a little differently. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, much like with the other archetype section, there's just a lot of possibilities that you are already a wizard or a druid or who knows, a fighter, a champion maybe, that wants to be a Knight of Lastwall, but isn't necessarily taking some of these other archetypes. You're not necessarily a Knight Vigilant or a Medic or a Cavalier, but you might still want some cool stuff. And we put forth that, yeah, the Knights of Lastwall are always training, finding new ways to fight, like developing the Agile Shield Grip and things like that. And these feats are meant to cover most of the existing classes. I don't think we get all of them exactly, but a lot of the basics are covered here. So you champion feats, new fighter feats, new cleric feats, bards, wizards, witches. So if you're a spellcaster who's in the Knights of Lastwall, you have new techniques that you develop to fight undead or evil using your spells. There's new ways to use your shield, new ways to use your armor, new ways to use your cantrips and all the other stuff that you would normally do to be more of a Knight of Lastwall rather than just a generic fighter, generic wizard.
Right. Yeah, one of them, and like you say, there's a lot for everyone. There's a lot of champion and fighter feats in here, but there are also things like stuff for bards, stuff for clerics, obviously. And one that I thought was really neat is stuff for sorcerers and witches, which you have to have a familiar, which witches do, but sorcerers don't always. And you have to follow a good aligned deity, and then your familiar becomes like this divine emissary, and it gives them some special powers. That's pretty cool. You can be like a divine casting sorcerer with, I don't know, angel blood or something. And you're like, no, I'm meant to do this. And I have this messenger from my God telling me, and guiding me and helping me figure out my path. And that's really cool.
Yeah. One I really like, it's another spellcaster feat. It's detonating spell, which looks like you can be a cleric or an oracle or a sorcerer or a witch or a wizard. Any of those classes can
Any of
take
them.
that. But the idea being that, sometimes you get masses of undead, whole bunch of zombies, and you want to cast a spell into the group, but hit a lot of them at once. This is a meta magic spell or meta magic feat. You cast detonating spell, and if it succeeds and deals damage to the target you're hitting, if you hit someone with an acid arrow, it can then blow up and do a bunch of splash damage to everyone around it too. So
Okay,
this is how you hit a bunch of people with I don't know, a 2-action heal spell to hit one undead that then does a bunch of positive damage to everyone at once.
Oh, that is very cool, especially because a lot of encounter design, you have like the one bigger, stronger one, and then a bunch of weaker ones. So you can like, I'm going to target the big, strong one with my 2-action heal, and then still splash damage all these like weaker, I don't know, zombies or skeletons or something around them.
Yeah.
That is very cool. It's a 6th level feat too, so you don't have to wait too long to get it.
Yeah, and again, because it's just available for these classes, you don't have to be a member of or you don't have to take any of the other archetypes. You can just be like, oh, I'm 6th level, I'm a Knight of Lastwall, let's take a detonating spell and do cool stuff with it.
That is so cool. There's once again the names of things comes to mind, how so many of them are just very cool. Devoted Guardian is cool. Reliable Squire helps you with aid checks, so you can no longer critically fail them and make things worse. If you not only do you get a +2 circumstance bonus to aid, if you roll a critical failure, you get a failure instead. So it inoculates you against making things worse. It's fantastic. Jeez, just so many of these are so cool. Chemical purification? Ooh. Yep. Once per round as a free action, you can do stuff. Tell me about chemical purification.
So it's an additive for alchemists.
Cool.
And so you apply it to alchemist fire or a ghost charge from the APG. It's a different type of bomb. Basically, you infuse your bomb with purifying power, and it deals positive damage in addition to the normal damage. So that's another way you can take out a huge crowd of zombies all at once. Hit them with a bomb that blows up with a bunch of extra positive damage.
That sounds so awesome. Like when I think about playing in like an undead slaying campaign or something, and I'm a Knight of Lastwall, being an alchemist isn't the first thing I think of. Like you might be one of those pillars, like you were talking about, creating medicines and things, and other sorts of weapons and things for your knights that you support. But the idea of being like, oh, and now I'm in battle and have to figure this out. I know, purifying power to these bombs. Yeah. Gina B in chat says purified Tinglefoot bag. It doesn't do damage. Would that even work?
So another thing I want to point out in this section is the different sidebars. Normally, if you read the sidebars up to this point, they just tell you, oh, here's some good classes that might be a Knight Vigilant, Knight Reclaimant, so on and so forth. But we recognize that people are playing the game in different ways. So there's these sidebars are a lot of little suggestions about different play styles and different subsystems and stuff that you can play with. So the very first one says, hey, there's a level 0 character rule variant in the game mastery guide. Here's some ways that you might play out that story. You might be the squires joining up for the first time, or even the super cool Metroid style idea that you were great heroes, but you got life drained by a ghost or a vampire, and now you're back to level 0 and trying to recover your power to go take the fight to your enemies. There's how to use relics from that if you want to go into dual classing, or maybe even make it grittier using stamina. There's a lot of different ways you can handle it. The archetype, I think the other archetype section also mentions free archetype if you're into that. Here's some good archetypes that might work for that if you're looking to do free archetypes. So there's lots of some suggestions on how to play with all of those if you're into that.
Yeah, I am definitely into that. There are so many neat things in here. Purifying breeze. I could use that because my office shares the cat box. Wait, that's not what this does. You transfer the divine essence of your magic to the air around you, cleansing it of toxins. Oh, that is what it does, actually. Yeah, no, hey, where's my cat? We need purifying breeze, cat. I need to get to level 14. Attempt a counteract check against each airborne disease or poison in a 15-foot radius, regardless of your success or failure. Everyone gets a bonus. This is so cool. That is I don't know. That's pretty cool, especially because there's that like gust of wind cantrip or something that also
Mhm.
works. So you could, or a non-cantrip spell, I guess that would work with the healing trait. Oh, okay. Well, that's still cool. So you heal some of the 2-action heal, and also it's like poof, the air is cleaner.
Yeah.
Oh my
You
gosh.
could throw one, you could touch someone with a 1-action detonating spell, and then so first action would be detonating spell meta magic, 1-action
What?
touch heal to hurt an undead, and that blows up, and then you create a purifying breeze around you as a result.
Oh my goodness. Kitsune Warlock, our own Dustin Knight asks, well, first says opens air freshener at table. I'm shaking my head at you, sir. I'm shaking my head. And also, will it purify confunk? I think that's a legitimate question.
It
Can you
depends on the
purify?
level of the confunk.
It's true.
Right? It's a
Roll
tough counteract check.
tough counter check. I mean, you could try, but really depends. Which day of the con are you asking about? Because if it's the last one, no, you cannot. Shen Wolf says 20th level confunk. Yeah, no, I don't. Good luck. Good luck. Oh, that is so cool. There's a lot of really fun stuff in here. Consecrate spell. Infuse a spell with the power of your faith. Consecrating it. The next action targets a single undead. You can expend a focus point. Oh, this is cool. And it does additional good or positive damage equal to the level of your focus spells. That's really cool. So you can just like infuse stuff. If you have focus spells that are like utilitarian and you really need that burst of damage against some undead menace, this is a way to actually still use that power to do cool stuff. It's really neat.
Shanwolf is asking if most of this stuff deals with good and positive, or is it just positive or just good? I think a lot of it is positive, some of it is good, and then there's like a small overlap where it's good and positive. Mm-hmm. So I think you should be able to trim down to just the good ones you need if you're fighting demons.
I'm also going to point out Rule 0 exists. So if you're running a game where your PCs are fighting a bunch of demons like Sean Wolf, and you're like, you know what, these are very cool, but I don't want you to consecrate and do positive because that doesn't help against demons. Let's just make it good damage. And it's like, cool. Yeah. So as a GM, yeah, you can just say, sure, for you, this spell works different and it only does good damage. Oh, okay.
Or the other thing I was going to say is we don't know what classes are going to be coming down the pipeline in the future, right?
True.
1 year, 2 years, 3 years from now, there might be a class that like suddenly, I don't know, the detonating spell would have been perfect for that class. There was no way for us to know that class existed right now when we made this book. So yeah, maybe that class can take that detonating spell as well.
Sure. Yeah, it's very cool. Is there anything else in the nightly training section you wanted to point out? There's a lot of cool things in here, but if we go through all of it, we'll be here till midnight.
I think I'm good. I think I can look at some equipment now.
Is that what's next?
Yes.
Equipment.
You get 2 pages of just some smatterings of things like weapons, armor, random gear. So like if you need your standard for your knight to carry around to represent like I'm here with this group, we're good with that. You know, you have some of that. You have a war saddle, so you can stay on your mount a lot easier. So there's a lot of little basics here. The 2 things I want to point out are the new weapon. One of the new weapons, the bladed gauntlet, which is hidden.
Yes.
I
love those
style weapon. So you're never left without a weapon, even if you drop your sword or whatever.
Yes, they're light bulk. They have the freehand trait. These are one of my favorite things for like a fighter or something as like a backup weapon, because you can use it with like, for bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing. This is an omni damage weapon, right? Do whatever you want with it. You can have the gauntlet or the blade retracted and just punch people, and then you can have it slide out and do piercing or slashing as you cut with it or stab them with it. And it calls out on the weapon description that this blade is like forever part of this gauntlet. Like it's the same weapon. You can't just use the blade on its own. So it's 1 rune for both things, which is very economical. I think it is a very cool weapon.
Yeah. And the other thing is there's been a new category of items called adjustments, which are just like ways to modify existing items. There were some adjustments in the Grand Bazaar, like add to an armor and make it more reflective, and you can shine light at people and stuff, different stuff. So the cool one here, at least to me, is the throwing shield. You attach some straps and special weightings to make it easier to throw, and suddenly you can do your Captain America cosplay and deal a d6 of bludgeoning damage when you throw your shield at people.
Yeah, and you got your returning rune on there, which is only level 3. So yeah, by level 3, you can be doing full-on Captain America shenanigans, which is so cool.
Yeah.
And this makes that possible. One of my favorite things that's here, actually, before I move on to that, there's also the other adjustment is parade armor, which I also think is cool. One of my favorite things to do, especially with characters that are very dedicated to a specific deity or organization, is I loved in first edition to get parade armor, which is like, oh, if I'm already buying armor of a certain level and it matches the parade armor stats and values I'm looking for, I'll just buy parade armor. It's a little more, but it's like cool looking armor. Well, now because it's an add-on, any armor can be parade armor, which is so cool. It's just armor that is like, hey, it's very decorative and it helps you with non-combat function and says like, hey, I'm a very cool member of this organization. Gives you a +1 item bonus to diplomacy and intimidate checks against creatures of the same affiliation, yada, yada, yada. But it's just so cool.
Yeah, and the fun thing about adjustments is you can always take them off, right? So you can decide, I'm going to go into battle. I actually don't need it to look fancy. Let's turn it back to normal armor and then
yes, you do. What if there's a photographer around? You always need it to look fancy.
That's true. I didn't think about that. If a traveling artist comes by and says, hold on, let me paint this
battle. I want to make sure that you're wearing the cool armor. It does add 1 bulk to the armor because you've got like extra doodads and bits sticking off and things like making it big and bulky and cool, but still, it's so neat.
So it's just a lot of fun little basics for knights. We're always looking to add extra little bits of gear. I'm sure Dustin in chat can say, yes, adding more gear is always fun.
Yeah. So Dustin was asking, what does like no armor, parade armor look like? It's just nothing. It is medium or heavy only, which might take a little bit. I don't know. If I was the GM, I would let you use it on light armor because even explorer's clothing, right? It could be like explorer's clothing could be very rugged vestments for a specific deity or something like that. If you were a devout of Nethes, right? And you're like, yeah, I'm a cleric of Nethes, but also a wizard or something like that. And you want like super cool Nethes perfect robes that are like half black and half white and they're super neat and they have like ridiculous World of Warcraft shoulders and all this stuff. Like, I don't know, I'd let you do it. I'm like, sure, apply parade armor to it, even though it says medium or heavy. That's cool. I'd let you do it, but I think it's really neat.
Sure.
That extra 1 bulk might hurt you if you're using light armor, though. Yeah. You're like, wait, I'm a dex character. I don't have high strength. I can't.
The wizard can't take all the extra armor.
Too heavy. Shane Wolf says my shoulder pads poke me in the eye when I put my arms up. That's right. I want that kind of armor. The most extra. But the other thing that I'm also happy to see it come back is the armored coat. And I'm gonna flash it on the screen. If you are joining us live for the Twitch video, you'll see it there on the right. It is the big sort of trench coat with little like plates of metal in there, giving you some armor. It is interesting in that this is a +2 armor bonus, +2 dex cap, right? So it is light armor, kind of protects a little bit like medium, but it's only a +4 overall. And I think a lot of the other armor is +5 overall, unless I'm just high on something.
I think someone asked me about that, and I'm definitely going to be looking into what the proper values are. But yes, it's meant to be as competitive as any of the other.
Is it? Okay, because I wasn't sure. I know that
in theory, we want everything to be on equal footing, right? Just give you different options and play styles. So
okay, because I know in first edition, one of the arguments is, well, it's super easy to put on in one action, but I'm like, when does it ever come up in game? Like sometimes, but not all the time. It doesn't seem like it's worth a +1 trade.
Armors in 2e also have a lot of extra knobs that you can fiddle with for the balance purpose, increase its strength or the bulk or whatever. So yeah, there are ways to make this all work.
Well, and it's also comfort and flexible. So if you're playing an Outlaws of Alkenstar game, you might want to look into this armored coat just so you have like that cool, awesome duster look, but armored. And it's comfortable, so you can take a nap under a tree with your, Stetson on your face wearing this armor and not have to worry about putting it on if you're suddenly attacked. Very cool. Other cool shout out gear, portable altar, great for very religious characters. There is a tabard, so you can really show off your affiliation. There's just, I don't know, there's some very cool stuff. The war saddle. What does the war saddle do? Someone asked earlier, and I apologize, I can't recall who had asked this. It might have been Jaina B, about mounted character options. I didn't see a ton of those other than this war saddle.
Well, there's also the cavalier options, so technically
Sure.
supporting an archetype. There isn't too much. There's also a new lance in here, so if you're into lances, that's perfect for mounted combat. Yeah, but the war saddle makes it so if you fall unconscious, you stay in your saddle. You have to use it's specific interact actions to remove yourself. So it's pretty good for staying up on your horse and hopefully escaping in situations where you've fallen unconscious while on your horse.
That sounds very useful. If you're a mounted type character, I think you definitely want to buy a war saddle. It's a level 5 item, only 50 gold. You should definitely buy this. Yeah. That's like almost turning into one of those must-haves, you know?
Yeah.
For mounted characters. Or if you're riding your Eidolon or something, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Going into the next page, we have some new magic items. The very first one listed, I have a question about.
Sure.
I'm going to show our audience. You'll see a picture there on the left. This is called the Armor of the Holy Warrior. And it's described as based on armors used by the Holy Warrior. Now, based on, so it's not like, hey, this is ancient armor and we polished it, right? But okay, but based on armors used by the Holy Warriors who served under General Arneson in the Shining Crusade. Okay, this is like way back when Tar-Baphon was first running amok, and they were able to like fight him and contain him in Gallowspire. So it's based on those armors. The art is very cool. I like it. But it has the Iomade crest on it of the long sword with the sunburst behind it. Yeah. But she wasn't a god at that point. So how do you reconcile those things?
Well, because this is the modern version of, this is how the armor was shaped when General Arneson was using it. But this is our take on it now, right? It was based on the armor, but that armor wouldn't have had, it would probably had a symbol of Eridan, if anything. But I imagine like the shape of the armor and things like that were the things that were used to base this armor on, right? And probably some of the magic as well. But you can base I don't know, a new car model off of like old stuff from cars, but then it has all the new fancy doodads and stuff.
Gotcha.
So this is the new fancy doodad is a new religious symbol on the front.
Okay, I'm just making sure. Because I saw it and I was like, I suppose it's based on, it's like the ancient style of armor, so you're wearing it and it's like wearing ancient fashions. It's like, why are you wearing this ancient stuff? Well, I respect the past. Okay. All right.
Sure.
Okay,
it's like wearing a Victorian outfit, but still having like cool new hairstyles.
Are they Galarian cosplayers? Is that what it is?
Yeah, like, cosplay is totally a thing, I'd say, in Galarian.
I'm cosplaying a knight of the original Shining Crusade. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so we have a question from chat from Hyena Spots saying, no one cares about some silly armor. Tell us more about the horseshoe. There is a horseshoe on the right side of this page. It is very cool. It is called the Campaign Stable. It's not a stable, it's a horseshoe. Guess what? It's a stable.
It's a structure.
It's so cool. Okay. All right, Pathfinder first edition fans, do you remember the campfire bead that you could put in the ground, and it's a campfire with heat and light and everything, and then you could like say a command word and it turns back into a bead and you're like, cool, no one ever has to go and find wood again. It is that, but for your horses or whatever your exotic mounts might be. It is literally this horseshoe that you put on the ground and it unfolds itself magically into like this big stable. Good enough for 8 horses, or it can like reconfigure in different ways for different size creatures, but essentially the same amount of space. But yeah, it could just unfold and become a stable. So that way there's not this weird conversation of like, well, we all traveled on horses and then we've got them. And then if we're where do we put them? And then it's going to be cold and they're supposed to be rain. You know what? Just, it's an 8th level item. By the time you are worried about all that stuff, you can probably just afford this with, party gold or something. And it takes 1 minute and it just once per day, but that's all you need. And it unfolds and becomes a big stable.
Yeah.
Very cool. What are some of your favorite things in this magic item section?
I am particularly fond, for some reason, I'm particularly fond of Camp Shroud, which is like this powder that you throw into your campfire when you're camped out for the night,
Mhm.
and it covers everything in like a misty smoke thing, and anyone who is outside of this area can't see the light of your campfire, so you use this to hide from people while you're out in dangerous areas.
Yes.
And you can make bigger shrouds, ones that have tougher DCs to notice you and stuff, depending on how much you're willing to pay for this stuff. And this is also a fun little story about development. Is
Ooh.
Camp Shroud was originally a spell for
Oh,
this
very
book,
cool.
and it didn't fit in the spell section.
Oh.
And I decided, well, I want to keep this somehow. And then, you know what? I need more stuff to fill in space in the magic items section. So I cleaned it up a little bit, tweaked the wording a bit, and
Yeah.
gave it a few different things. And suddenly it became an item that anyone can use. So suddenly it opened up from like, oh, only the wizards could use this, to anyone can buy this stuff and use it. And it makes, I think, a lot of sense that way, where like you
Yeah.
might be a group of knights that don't have any spellcasters with you, but you still want something like Camp Shroud. You don't have to rely on a caster to cast that for you. You can just
Yep.
buy it for yourself and take it with you.
One interesting thing is it is just an illusion consumable rather than like an alchemical one.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're an alchemist, you can't just make one every day, which would have been cool. But I kind of get it. And also the minor one is only 15 gold. So if you imagine that you're going deep into enemy territory and need several of these, maybe you'll just buy a few of the minor ones.
Yeah.
The big ones just make, like you said, the emanation bigger. So
Yeah.
if you're going along with a big, if you're going along with a big company, you're probably putting a lot of resources into this, secret mission. So you're bringing along your campaign stable and a bunch of, these maybe moderate size ones that do a 20-foot emanation. So you can try and cover most or all of the campaign stable. So that makes some sense.
And the other thing I like is that the called rune. You just slap
Yes.
this rune on something, and whenever you want it, you be like, I need my sword. And if it's within 100 feet of you, you can do the Star
Thor.
Wars or Thor,
Yeah.
pull your weapon to you.
Hold your hand out and be like, all right, wait for it. Just give me a minute. Hold on. There it is.
There you go. So it's a good rune, and in fact, it's common, so anyone can make use of that. You don't even have to be a knight of Lastwall to have fun with it.
That is cool. Yeah, the called rune is definitely something that is super handy. If especially like if you want a thrown weapon but you don't use it, I don't know. Called is just so cool. You can pull the trick where it's like, my sword is over there in my pack. Don't worry, I'm not going to do it. Just kidding.
I think it's just a lot of times that kind of stuff happens in stories.
Yeah.
So we got to have it, right?
You got to have it. It's very cool. Geez, all the different things. Anointing oil, banner of the restful. There's just so many cool things in here.
The other big thing a lot of people latched onto was the ghost oil.
Oh, yes. That is something I definitely wanted to bring up. Let's talk about ghost oil. So it's over there on the left. It's a little green bottle with some stuff in it. And we had a ghost oil in first edition that was like, gives you ghost touch on your weapon for a little bit of time. What I really like is in second edition, you went a step further, right?
Mm-hmm.
In that it does that. That's basically what it does, right? You rub it on your own weapon and boom, you have ghost touch. But
it turns into a ghost weapon.
It's a ghost weapon. It can no longer affect corporeal creatures, which is just so cool. Like, I mean, I don't know how often you're fighting like a ghost and a not a ghost at the same time, but just the idea that like you pour this on your own weapon and it just turns all like spooky and ghostly and you're like, ooh, yeah. Ghost blade is just the coolest. If I had a character with it, I would probably make it and do it just to show it off and be like, my God, look, I'm gonna stab you. Oh, it doesn't do anything. Oh, wait, it's been almost a minute. Hold on, let me not stab you anymore. Great for possessed characters, Gina B says. Ooh, I did not think of that.
Maybe. I don't know exactly how that interacts off the top of my head.
Wow.
Yeah, I would allow it as a GM. I'm not saying that's the official ruling, but I'm good for that.
I would 100% allow that. Can you imagine that? Like, you're like, we think the bard is possessed. Mm-hmm. She hasn't tried to seduce anyone in the last couple hours. And that seems a little, you know what? I'm just going to put this surreptitiously on a dagger and just like stab her in the back and see what happens and see if she like screams or not. Ah! Oh, yep. Nope. There's a ghost in there. We got a ghost. That's so cool. Ghost oil is one of my favorite things in here. You've got a swift mount saddle, so you can saddle up as a free action once a day. Why once a day, I wonder? Level 7 item once a day. It does save you from mounting a creature. It saves you an action, but it's not an action I imagine would be useful all the time. Is it because of the bonus on nature checks, or?
Yeah, part of it is it already has a bonus, but the other thing is like usually you are intentionally getting on your mount in a safe situation, right?
Right.
If you're in a spot where you need to get onto your mount like instantly more than once per day, then you're probably in a tough situation. Probably can make do with it once in a day or so.
All right, cool. Another one that's I think a good call out is the Whistle of Calling, which if you have ever played any video game ever, where you get to summon your mount to you, because who wants to drag them along all the time, and all of a sudden you're like, I need my mount. You can use the whistle and they show up right by your side.
Yeah.
And it literally just does that. It's so cool. Within a mile. Within a mile. Poke a mount, I choose you, says Dustin. Yeah, seriously. It's just a very cool way of being like, I just need my mount. If you're a mounted character, that is a must-have item. It is level 15 though, so it is a high-level must-have item, but as soon as you can get your hands on it and afford the 6,300 gold pieces for it, you should absolutely do that.
Gina B is asking if it works on animal companions, and it specifically says in the presence you have to basically attune the whistle to a specific animal, and it says any companion or other allied creature willing to be your mount. Just your animal companion probably is willing to be your mount. You probably aren't gonna be riding every animal companion you find, right? You're not gonna ride your owl animal companion, but it'd probably be like, yeah, I guess I could do that to make this work. And all it does is it teleports to you. It doesn't necessarily say it teleports to you and then you're instantly riding it. It's just like, oh yeah, you have it ready to go
somewhere within 30 feet.
Yeah,
that's cool. Other cool things, very knightly things: Knight Captain's Lance, Guardian Shield, very knightly looking things in here. A Shining Shield. Ooh, that sounds useful.
The Guardian Shield has the symbol of Kazutal on it, the Arcadian goddess of community in battle. If you go check out the other chapters of the book, you'll understand why Kazutal is being featured here. She's one of the many gods that are worshipped among the Knights of Lastwall.
Interesting. Gosh, I wish we could talk about other parts of the book, but there are a lot of really cool things here. All these player options are so freaking cool.
Got one last set of player options here, I think.
Oh my God. Oh, we talked about that Undead Assassin earlier, and there's a weapon just for them. So there's the Undead Scourge, which is a +1 striking disrupting dagger. Now, I usually can't get disrupting on non-bludgeoning weapons, but this one has it. Bluish white metal blade with a faint glow. It's just very cool. Yeah, once per hour, you can disrupt their connection with negative energy so they can't be healed by it anymore. What?
Yeah.
That is so cool. Especially you have those, like, I don't know, those ghoul jerks who are like summoning or channeling negative energy. They're doing like the 3-action harm, and they're like, hey, can I just healed myself again and I hurt you? Haha. And you're like, you know what? Stop that. Just stick them with it. Very cool. There's a bunch of new. Oh, do you want to talk about any other items before we move on? There's a lot of cool stuff.
I think we covered all the ones that I'm excited about. Not that I don't like the other ones.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Just really into Camp Shroud for some reason. I think I like the story about how I got moved around.
No, that's an amazing story. I actually really like that because I could see that as a spell as well. It makes sense as a spell, but it also makes a lot of sense as a consumable item that you just throw in the campfire. So let's move on to the spells section.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Once again, awesome art. I have come so much to expect awesome art from y'all. You always get such good art out of your artists that like, whatever, it's awesome art. No one cares. No, I do. It's very cool.
The Lastwall mage, the halfling mage there,
yes,
is art that was featured in the character guide. We try to do little Easter eggs and connections like that as some of the art that you saw previously gets to come back.
I thought it looked familiar, but I wasn't going to call you out on it, so that's fine. So some new spells in here, some of which I don't know are pretty cool. There's some usable ones for some of the sneaky stuff those Crimson Reclaimers might be doing, like Erase Trail, where you just get rid of one creature's passage from an area, which is kind of cool. So they can't follow you.
I really like the dancing shield spell. You cast it on someone else's shield, and whenever you sustain the spell, it automatically does the raise shield action for them.
Oh, that is
Um,
cool.
so you can keep them safe. And then if you cast the heightened, the 4th level version of it, you can even use your reaction to shield block on their behalf and protect them with their own shield.
Okay, now that is cool, especially folks who like that sort of shield other type build where it's like, oh, I'll take some of the damage or whatever, and like, it's like, okay, you can really have your front liner literally freeing up their action economy to do things like attacks of opportunity, or if you're a champion, you can intervene and prevent damage. Like you can do all that stuff and not worry about your shield block reaction because your spellcasters got it. They'll just,
and
I got you.
Dancing Shield is on all 4 traditions, so anyone can do that. You don't have to worry about like, oh, only the cleric can do that. Like, nah. If you want your, I don't know, your bard to sing a song and keep your shield to protect you, go for it.
Oh, that's funny. Gen C Defense says, I have a mighty need. Yeah. Dancing Shield is so cool. It is uncommon, however, so you'll have to check with your GM before you get it.
Or if you join the Knights of Lastwall, it becomes available to you.
Or join the Knights of Lastwall. But yeah, that is a very cool spell because I really like those sort of like hyper support characters that let someone else with just some terrorizing melee build just go ham on stuff. So this is a cool way to do that.
If you want some more support, specifically for shields, the next spell on the list, Desperate Repair. As a reaction, when someone's shield within 60 feet would be destroyed, you can spend this reaction and cast a spell and keep that shield going at 1 hit point and keeps it together.
That is awesome, because there's so many times you've got like an expensive shield, right? You have like a, sturdy shield or something like that. It's a magical shield. It's really cool. And you're like, it's a good shield. It should survive a couple hits. And then you get hit by this really big attack and you're like, look, I will die if I don't use my shield block. So I'm going to do that, but my shield's gonna lose it. And can you imagine just coming out of the gate as looks like arcane or primal, right? So you're like the wizard of the party and you're like, no, I got you. Desperate Repair. You're like, wait, what? Yeah, 1 hit point left. You're still okay. So cool. I like that one a lot. One of them is Forced Mercy. Which you use against another creature, and you soften the target's blows, ensuring they avoid vital areas and cause no lasting harm. All damage to living creatures becomes non-lethal, and persistent bleed dealt by the target is reduced to 0. That is cool. I actually like this not just for hey, we're in the middle of like a fight where they're trying to murder us, but for that situation. It's only level 1, right? So you can prepare a couple of them and be like, okay, you two want to duel and you want to like go all out, and like maybe you don't all have merciful weapons or ways to deal non-lethal damage. You can just say, okay, well, in this bout everyone gets Forced Mercy on them. Boom.
And you can, if you're willing, you can even choose to critically fail, so you get the full duration of the effect. So
and critical failure is a whole minute.
Yeah, pretty easy way to go in and do that non-lethal stuff if you want to just subdue someone.
Yeah, the heightened version at level 4 increases the range to 100 feet, and you can target up to 8 creatures. That is like 100% perfect for an arena type situation where your gladiators are going to go out there and do stuff. And or in the like Knights of Lastwall, you're training people, right? You're like, okay, so we're going to have all of these squires go out into a grand melee, and we want to make sure that we're not losing important knights on the battlefield, but we still want you to have this experience fighting in a big melee so that you can be prepared for battle, and you Force Mercy on everyone just to make sure.
So another spell I like is the Sign of Conviction. This is just a way for divine characters to blast. You create a sign of a magical religious symbol. It gives you some bonus to AC. You're stuck in place, but then you become like the artillery. Every time you sustain a spell, you blast someone within 100 feet with energy, and you just keep doing it and just keep blowing people up. Just lock in and be like unleashing Iomede's might and just being the artillery and blowing every zombie up that's coming towards you.
Wait, sustained for up to a minute? Okay, that is pretty cool.
Yeah, and it specifically says you can sustain a spell multiple times within the same round, so you can shoot multiple blasts. If you just want to stay in place and just shoot 3 blasts every round for a whole minute, you can be the divine rail cannon.
The divine machine gunner. You're like, here's my sign of conviction, and now I just like at everyone.
Yep.
Oh, that is so cool. Okay. That might be one of my new favorite divine spells. It is divine only, of course, because of the flavor of the spell. But oh my gosh, that is so cool. You worship a good deity. The spell gains the good and light traits. Ooh, it's bright. Deals your choice of either fire or good damage. Hey, Sean, that's good for your demon killing game. You can just stand there and machine gun down demons. That is, and evil spells.
You can darkness.
Evil and darkness.
Old. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Shan, you need this. You need the spell for your demon slaying campaign. That is so cool. I love it. If you worship a neutral deity, the spell gains the force trait and deals force damage.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah. I think it's just a pretty fun blasting spell. And
it can be heightened every 2 levels. So 3, 5, 7, and 9. That is so cool. Oh my gosh. Oh, I just spotted one that I immediately love. It's 4th level. It's divine and primal, and it does a 120-foot line, and it is called Radiant Beam. Mm-hmm. If you want that Macross cannon of light that you can just blast out and be like super holy Hadouken, you can certainly do so. You fire a beam of blinding light from your outstretched hands, dealing 5d10 good damage.
And possibly dazzling.
Mm-hmm. Wow, this is... Oh my gosh. If it passes through an area of darkness or magical darkness, it attempts to counteract it. Because, I mean, it would anyway. It has the light trait, but still. That is so cool.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I am excited about Radiant Beam.
League of Legends, that's the Lux ultimate. She shoots a big beam of light.
Yep. This is really cool.
Yeah, there's just a lot of fun stuff in here.
I see a reaction spell, Martyr's Intervention. Mm-hmm. A creature within range would take damage that reduces it to 0. And you take the damage? Target is reduced to 1 hit point instead of 0. All remaining damage that was prevented is instead dealt to you. Yep, perfect, great. You don't want your main person to go down. You have 1 to save their shield and another 1 to save them. Mm-hmm. Of course, the Martyr's Intervention is Divine, Occult, and Primal, and Desperate Repair is Arcane and Primal. So the only way to get both is to be a Primal spellcaster. But
so you gotta be the Savior Druid.
Savior Druid. No, Sir Knight, I will keep you alive.
Or I guess you could have a cool sorcerer bloodline, the Fey sorcerer that I guess decides I'm gonna screw around with people by being like, haha, you thought you killed my buddy, but he's still at 1 hit point.
That sounds funny. Or it just really doesn't like gremlins. Gremlins keep breaking stuff and killing people, and I'm not gonna stand for it. That is so cool. That is so cool.
One other spell I really like, which is just like so simple, but works really well, particularly if you have a couple of different frontliners. The Synchronized Steps, you cast it on 2 different people.
Okay.
And there's a link between them. Whenever one of them steps, the other one can use a reaction to step. Or if another one strides, the other one can use a reaction to stride. So you can just like make them stay alongside each other as they move around the battlefield.
Do they have to stay adjacent?
No.
The other can use reaction. Okay, so if you had like 2 next to each other and the enemy comes up to them, you could be like, hey, I'm going to use Synchronized Step. And they could like, step and flank.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is
the only thing that matters is that they're close enough when you first cast it.
Which is 30 feet. So yeah, you're all in like a close distance. That is so cool.
But when you heighten it, you can do that with up to 10 people. You can have the entire party just moving in tandem.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
So wait, hold on. I mean, it uses your reaction, you only get 1 a turn. But at 5th level, 60-foot range, target up to 10 willing creatures, which is like literally all the party and all of their animal companions and all of their eidolons and all of their everything.
Yeah, the entire group.
And one person is like, and I'm going to step here. And everyone's like, cool, we all use a reaction. We all step, and like shifts around the battlefield.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's I mean, that's the 5th level version, but it's
But the
also
first level version is still pretty great too.
it's
Just
just two
even
willing
two
creatures.
people. Yeah.
Yeah. You get your fighter and rogue or whoever like up at the front line, in melee investigator and a champion. It doesn't matter. And you're like, hey, y'all want flanking like forever? Cool. Cast it first round. It's sustained up to a minute. So every round I just keep it up, and that way, as soon as whoever goes first takes a step into flanking position, the other person can make sure they get there.
Gina B says that's perfect for a wand, and I honestly didn't even realize how perfect it is for such a thing. Yes, it's absolutely perfect for a wand.
It is absolutely perfect.
The only thing is, you only have so many reactions, and the caster has to keep sustaining it. But I think it's well worth it to use your third action to keep that going.
Yeah, again, that like hyper supportive caster build, this would be just gold for it. That one's arcane and occult, so your super supportive primal druid or sorcerer with a primal bloodline can't do it, but that's okay. I can't do all
that's the
three.
fun thing is that like everyone can find their way to do supportive stuff.
No, I like it actually. I like it that it's not like one type of magic does all these things. Yeah. This is so cool. All right, well that's the end of our chapter because
that's it.
We're blending into the other stuff. That is so cool. Jaina B says trick magic item. Oh my gosh, that's funny. You could be the Eldritch Trickster type of rogue and make sure you always get a flank. You know what? I'm going to cast this on you, and as soon as you move, I can also move. It's pretty funny. All right. Is there anything else you want to point out before we're done with the preview?
No, I think that's about it. I mean, that's only about 20 pages, but it feels like they're super packed with a lot of stuff.
Right.
And the only thing I'll say is that's not necessarily technically all the rules, mechanics stuff that's available in this book.
It's just chapter 3, right?
Yeah, chapter 3 is the obvious stuff, but there's also other things like there are new deities in the book in the previous chapter. So if that gets you mechanical stuff, there's some new pantheons in there. So there's a few little things here and there throughout the book that also count as mechanical options, which are, things you'll just have to discover on your own when you get the book.
Okay.
Hyena Spots is asking, how big is the book? The book is 128 pages long. So I think technically this chapter is the second smallest chapter after the introduction. So there's just a lot of lore and cool information on what you need to play your knight. If you want to know what you need to join up with the Knights of Lastwall or one of the specific factions, or where you might hold a campaign that has a lot of Knights of Lastwall running around, then there's a lot of other information for that kind of stuff. But even if you're just here for some cool items and other options, I think we got plenty to offer.
Yes, I think we do. All right, well, let's do. We still have some news to look at, and we have a word from our sponsor that we need to talk about. Actually, let me set this up so we're looking at me and not that. All right, let's go. Let's go find out about some Kobold plushies. Look at this guy; he's so cute. Kobolds are clever and mischievous, but have you ever thought of them as cuddly? Well, you will after you support the Gallant Goblins Kobold plushies. They're already here on Kickstarter and already funded with a ton of color and class combos with swappable accessories and clothing to create your perfect little adventuring party. So you should sign up today at koboldplush.com to get a free digital bonus one-shot when you back the project. That's koboldplush.com. I love these things. They're so cute. This is Rory, who's our little spellcaster, and he has this like silvery cape. I think it's a sorcerer because at least my Rory is, because he's very flashy. So high charisma is very like, yes, do the things. And he likes fire. So very cool. I think they're freaking adorable. This is already, this Kickstarter has already been fully funded, and a lot in addition to that. Yes, thank you, Kitsune Warlock, for the link. Appreciate it, Dustin. But they're already up to 36,000 of their 4,000 goal, which means tons and tons of stretch goals. So go check that out. Very cool. All right. You ready for what news, right?
Yeah.
There's a couple big ones. Pathfinder news. Pathfinder news. Pathfinder news. Pathfinder news. All right, so we got some big news this week. I'm gonna just go out there. One of the biggest ones. I'm missing my file. I have a bunch of files. There's so many open right now. Here we go. One of the biggest ones is Sarah Robinson, art director, is leaving Paizo, and May 13th is her last day. What?
Yes, something I only learned this morning.
Yeah, me too.
It's been based on what Sarah said on Facebook and the meeting this morning that explains it, that she's got new opportunities to look forward to in the future. So I'm excited for her to be doing some cool stuff. I've worked with Sarah directly in a lot of different cases, and I think Sarah is really the one that you can thank for a lot of the cool cover art for Lost Omens books. I think she's the one that found Katerina Burmack, the artist who's been doing most of those. So
very
lots
good.
of good stuff, and I'm wishing her the best.
Yeah, there's some pretty big shoes to fill there because Sarah's been with Paizo for I don't know how long, forever.
2004, I think.
2004. Wow.
Close to 20 years.
Yeah, close to 20 years. Wow, geez, 18 years. In like, I don't know, Pathfinder always looks so good, and in no small part because of the art direction, leading the charge of making sure these products are in tip-top shape, and doing a lot of those art orders and stuff for all of the fantastic characters and things that you see. So yeah, huge shout out to Sarah Robinson and all of the good work that she has done over these past almost 20 years. And I wish her well. I hope that she goes on to wonderful big things. And I'm also curious to see who is going to step into that position and what sort of things that they'll bring to the Pathfinder and Starfinder brands. So that is pretty cool. I don't know there's much more to say about that one. It's just that is the big shocking news of the day. So very interesting. Other news.
Well, the subscriptions and stuff, all of the April releases happened last week, which included the first virtual tabletop first module for Foundry in the Adventure Path line. Very first volume of Outlaws of Alkenstar is now available on Foundry.
Punks in a Powder Keg, written by yours truly. It is so cool. Sometimes people are like, is it weird to see? I'm like, no, it's super cool. As an adventure author, like we were talking about this before the show, as an adventure author, it's like one thing to write something in, a MS Word document and send it off to your developer. And then, 6 months to a year later, all of a sudden it's in a book and you're like, hey, I wrote that. That's cool. It is like 10 times cooler somehow to see it laid out, not just like ready to play, right? Because that's cool. You're like, oh crap, this is like ready to just run right now. And because I know the adventure so well, I could literally just run this right now because I have it. But it's such a high quality. Like as I'm going through it, hundreds and hundreds of hours must have been put into this thing, because as you go through, it's not like, oh, well, it saves you time prepping it. No. It saves you like time prepping it plus all of the extra stuff that you may or may not have done. And even if you did some of the stuff, like you're like, well, I thought it was cool, I put in sound effects. Okay. But maybe you didn't do the lighting, or you did the lighting but not the sound effects, or whatever. It's got all of it. It is such high quality. It is so cool. I've been hanging out in the Discord. So the Pathfinder 2nd Edition has its own Foundry because there's such a big community. And there is a thread specifically about Outlaws of Alkenstar. So if you are going to run Outlaws of Alkenstar using Foundry, I would highly suggest getting this module. It will save you so much time. If you already have the PDF, it will literally cost you $7 to get the Foundry module.
If not, you can drop the $25 that the module costs normally and then get the PDF as part of that. So
right. Yes. Either way, good deal. And then if you want advice on like, hey, I couldn't get this part to work, or I wasn't sure about this, or whatnot, you can drop into that thread. And there's a bunch of other people who are running it, as well as some of the folks who made it in the thread, sort of monitoring things and answering questions. It is a fantastically supportive community, and I am thrilled that this product exists. I cannot say enough good things about it. Whew. So excited. Hyena Spot says, very excited to see Alkenstar when we start playing next week. Yes, I hope you have a fantastic game. If you're playing on Foundry with this, it is so pretty. It is so cool. That is cool. They're going to do the whole thing. Next month, they're going to do the Abomination Vaults.
Yes.
Which is awesome.
So you get 2 months in a row of seeing your adventures ported over to Foundry.
Well, I'm actually running Abomination Vaults for some friends, including the network's own Ryan Costello.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna switch over to it as soon as it's out. I am buying it, and I am just gonna move everyone's characters and stuff over to the new world with that module installed, because if it is anywhere close to as well done as Outlaws of Alkenstar,
probably will be, knowing those people.
Like, I don't mind prepping stuff, but often I'm one of those GMs who I've had so much time physically at the table where I just kind of open my big box of minis and pull something out and use a proxy and don't worry about it. Or like, hey, let's take 5 and I'll draw this map really quick on a blank flip map. I'm a very last minute prep sort of GM. I'm not like I printed everything out at, the fancy printing store type of GM. So when it comes to virtual tabletops, I usually have some prep, but it's like, oh yeah, we're playing tonight. I need tokens. Ah, crap. Let me find some art, put it in Token Tool, make some tokens, do all the stuff. I am looking forward to not having that labor to do anymore, right? Yeah. To just being able to be like, that's fine. That part of it's done. Like all of the little minutia. I just reread the encounters and refresh my memory on what the party was doing, and I'm ready to go. So I think it's very cool. Oh, that is a clever name. Polyhedron. Clever, like Polly. Hey, Polly. Says that they're the opposite type of GM. I stressed for a week leading up to it, trying to make sure I've got it all down pat. I used to be that kind of GM, and at a certain point, you realize that even when you mess up, the players 90% of the time don't realize it if you just keep on rolling, and then you turn into a GM disaster like me. It's like, I don't know, whatever, it's fine. Spot says, you enter a room. Oh, I guess there's gremlins here. Cool, let's see what happens. That's fun. What kind of GM are you, Luis? I haven't played one of your games.
So I like prepping because I don't like downtime because of clerical work or prep or anything that could have been prevented by prepping. So there have been plenty of times where I used to run in person and it's like, oh, I have to draw this map, and then I just get frustrated having to spend the 5 minutes drawing the map when that's 5 minutes that we could have been playing. So once I started doing a lot of digital stuff, I was really excited to like have the maps ready and everything ready to go, and not lose that time to drawing the map or finding the right stat block or whatever it was. So I am just loving everything that keeps making that easier and easier for me. And the best thing is that once I do run in person again, I should have the setup where I can just still display stuff through like Foundry at my table and be like, here's the map. That's the map you're going through, and maybe even put it on like the table itself and just put your minis on it. I'm not going to draw that. It's just ready to go.
Right. Yeah. No, I get that. Yeah, you have valuable time. You don't want to waste it. And I totally get that too. I am usually the type who wants to be that way and then gets too busy and forgets, and the game's in 20 minutes and let me draw this map really fast. So I really appreciate having that work already done for me, so I can just spend that 20 minutes instead just reviewing the encounters and things and making sure that I can run a really good game and don't have to worry about, like you were saying, all the time it takes to draw maps and all that stuff. So a couple other pieces of news. We've got the announcement for the Starfinder Pirates of Skydock board game coming out, which is pretty cool. Coming out in August of this year. That's it. That's all I have to say about it. There's a whole blog article about it. It looks like
the Beyond team can talk about it.
Yeah, we'll go into it more there. I just thought I should mention it because that's pretty cool. I'm really glad that that Paizo products are getting more treatments outside of the tabletop gaming sphere. That's encouraging. Another big thing for Pathfinder is the Pathfinder terrain for Abomination Vaults is coming from Archon Studios. That is super cool.
Looks super fancy.
That's
one of the ways I might be like, well, if I'm running Abomination Vaults, but I have this stuff, maybe it's okay to do it in person and have this cool setup.
Right? Yeah, if I was running this in person, I 100% would want this. This is so cool. One of the things I almost did when I was writing Hands of the Devil is I was trying to figure out heights and stuff and how things would fit together and how it would feel to be in the space. Excuse me. I didn't do it, but I almost created like a 3D environment of like, basic textures and walls just to like be able to sort of move through the space and see what that would be like. So yeah, so having the terrain like this is kind of like a close second for me of being able to, I don't know, put it together and feel like, ooh, this is what the abomination vault would look like. On some level, there's like this psychotic back of my brain me who's like, you have foam cutting tools and it's a big multi-layered dungeon. So you could probably make a giant 3D terrain out of the whole thing that was like modular. You could remove pieces of it and see it like a slice of pie. And then I think, Vanessa, what are you talking about? You have other things to do. But that would still be cool. Gina B says, I have modeled dungeons in Minecraft. That's a good idea, actually. Go into creator mode, no monsters, and just be like, I'm just going to put all, and like you already have everything is in squares, right? So everything's a 5-foot square. Be cool. Any other news?
Nothing comes to mind for me.
Yeah, I'm looking through, and I think those are the big ones. So pretty cool. We got PaizoCon coming up, and I'm sure there will be far too much news coming out of that. So we will absolutely have a dedicated PaizoCon episode once that is over to talk about all of the cool things that have been released or mentioned or announced at PaizoCon. So look forward to that. All right. Wrap-ups and shout-outs?
Let's do it.
Wrap-ups and shout-outs. Wrap-ups and shout-outs. Wrap-ups and shout-outs. I'm going to let you go first.
Okay. I mean, my shout-out this time is to PF2 Tools, the PF2 Tools site, which has just got so many different things that I use all the time. In particular, I like the monster tool that lets you just quickly build a monster, and it has like all the stats ready to go. So you're like, oh, I need a level 15 monster to put it together. And it's a real quick way to build the monster if I don't have to necessarily like dig into the deep details of like, oh, this is actually going to be something that's getting published. It's like, oh, I just need a monster for my table for tonight or whatever. It's a quick way to do it. It has links to a lot of just really useful stuff, a lot of basics and how-tos. It's just this kind of big landing page for a lot of great PF2 stuff, which is super cool. And I've seen a lot of people make use of the scribe tool and template tool to make a lot of cool homebrew out there. Yes. I think a lot of that is used on the PF2 creations subreddit and stuff to like, oh, I made a new feat, I'll make it look nice and pretty without having to like actually go and buy publishing software or anything like that. I can just hop in here, plug in the details, and then have a nice little thing I can screenshot and share with people. So it's just got a lot of cool stuff going on with it, and it has links to lots of other cool stuff, fellow streams like Arcane Mark or YouTube channels for information. So whatever you need, you can probably use this. If you're really into Pathfinder 2, you can maybe set this as your homepage and just kind of grab whatever you need at any time.
Yeah, I love the monster builder. For the Roll for Combat's RPG Superstar, I use the monster builder extensively through the judging process, as I would basically be like, oh, it's a level 3 monster, and I would just set things for level 3 with various, like, especially skills, really easy, because you can say, well, one's low and one's moderate, one's high and one's extreme, and you can quickly see how the values all stack up. And it was a really good way to do a sanity check on the values of the monster submissions. It's also literally the thing I use when I am designing a creature for an adventure or a bestiary or something, because it does have a lot of those suggestions already there for me. And also I like to write it in their text boxes and then look at the formatted version as if I'm reading it for the first time, to say, hey, does this make sense the way I'm reading it on there? Is everything in the right order? Is this how I want to present it? And then I can use that to rewrite or copy paste it into my document I'm going to submit to my developer, because that I've already kind of done some of the sanity check already on it, that things should be in the right order and things should be the way they need to look at it. Also, reading things in like a different format or a different font helps your brain sort of reprocess it as new information. And so being able to write it in the one sections and then go see it fully formatted really helps you sort of analyze like, oh wait, I'm missing a speed. I never entered speed or something like that. And like make sure that you're checking off each of these things. And I find it invaluable. So yeah, definitely check that out. pf2.tools. It's very cool. Similarly, my shout out for today is Path Builder for Pathfinder. It works in a Chrome web-based environment or on Android, not on iPhone, unfortunately. But Path Builder is super useful. If you're making a second edition character, like this is basically just for making player characters. If you're making one, it mostly accepts, there's a few places you can enter custom options, but generally speaking, it will do all of the legal checks for you to say, okay, are you allowed to take this feat? Are you not allowed to take this feat? And there's even like optional rules and stuff. There's third-party stuff in there, like the Roll for Combat Dragon stuff is in there, which is cool. And some other third-party stuff is in there. It's a very cool tool. I use it these days to make most of my characters. You can also do it where you, like if you want to do all the way to level 20 your whole character build, you can put that in there. And then you set the level of your character. So you say, well, my character is second level. And it goes, okay. And it sets all your stats there and doesn't give you the options you selected past second level yet until you get there. But you can still sort of play around with your build and like, well, what am I going to take at third? And what does that look like? So that's really fun. They've also added some like digital rolling tools and some other stuff. So it's a little easier if you want to use it as a digital character sheet while you're playing in some other virtual tabletop that maybe doesn't support that properly, or you just find it easier to manage in Path Builder, you can do that. Lastly, it will sync with your Google Drive stuff. Again, Android supported. So if you have both the web version and the phone version, works on Windows as well too. Yeah, if you got like Chrome or something. So if you've got both the web-based Chrome version and the phone version, you can save your characters you make to your Google Drive and open them either place. So sometimes if I'm like, I don't know, at the doctor's office in the waiting room, just bored, I'm like, I'm gonna make a character. I'm gonna make a champion and see what comes out, and I can just fiddle with it. And then later, if I'm back on my computer, I can open the character and look at it in the full web display if I want.
Yeah, and I've even used it for my writing here and there.
Ooh, really?
I like the way I like to make NPC stat blocks, because even though I technically don't have to follow like the character creation rules for NPCs because they use the same building methods as monsters, I like to have like a foundation where it's like, okay, I'm going to figure out their ability boosts that they would have gotten, and where their stats would have been at this point, what training they would have had and stuff like that, and use that as like a very starting foundational thing. And Path Builder makes it super easy to be like, all right, take these 3 skills and these boosts and these feats or whatever, and then you can export that as like a PDF, and then I grab that as the starting point, and then of course break the rules because they're monsters and give them extra cool abilities and other stuff. But like making it so someone can look at it and at first glance be like, oh, this reads like a sorcerer, and obviously they have a cool ability, but at its core it's a sorcerer because it has this stuff, and look at its ability scores and this and that. So it's always fun to do that. Raising Rune Lords asks, anybody know when Kingmaker for PF2E starts shipping? I don't think that book is quite been sent off to the printer just yet, but I'm sure there will be announcements very soon on that.
Last update I heard, speculative update, was probably like late 2022. It seems like it's also one of those things where as soon as it's sent off to the printer, it's based on global shipping problems, so who knows when it shows up.
I'm sure there will be a campaign update that says we've shipped it off. It's off to the printer.
Yes.
So at the very least, you can look forward to that as soon as that's done, and you'll know at least it's been sent off. So it's only a few months away. Fingers crossed.
Very cool. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I can't wait to see that out there in the world. Kingmaker is very cool, so it'll be fun to see that for our second edition. Soon, Raising Rune Lords, soon. Number 18 says, it sounds like they're waiting for digital proof and then say yes to the printing. Yeah, I think they're in those like final stages of getting this thing finished and sent and done, which is absolutely fantastic to have it finally in that phase. So.
Yes.
All right, cool. Well, that's the show for the day. Thank you so much for joining us in this preview for Knights of Lastwall. There is so much cool stuff in here, not only for fantastic knights who want to reclaim their country that got destroyed by a lich, but also just for anyone else who wants to pick up some of these very cool options.
Yeah, I think the book comes out May 25th, just a few weeks away.
I
If
know,
you're a
around
subscriber, you
PaizoCon.
might get it in a few weeks if you're lucky.
What? That's very
Just
cool.
how Desna chooses who gets a book.
That's right. Fantastic. Well, I can't wait to see this thing, and I definitely want to use some of these. I want to make that super support caster now with a bunch of these options. Either that or the divine blaster with like the big rays of light and stuff. That's very cool. So,
did they have an update on the Abomination Vaults hardcover? Asked Polyhedron in chat. Yes, that's also slated to come out at the same time as Knights of Lastwall. So
yep.
Look
Late
forward
May.
to that. Now, if you're waiting for the 5e version, I think that's still a few months away, but the 2e compilation will be ready to go quite soon, hitting your shelves in a few weeks.
Right, and I believe the Foundry version of Abomination Vaults is based on the compilation, which does have a couple little fixes and tweaks. Such as one of the things I heard, a little birdie told me, is that like in James Jacobs' book and in my book, we both gave away a either rare or uncommon piece of loot that is like a very specific piece of loot, and it's the same in both books. And it's like, well, we don't need two of those. So they've adjusted little things like that just to make sure that it's not like, wait, this rare thing we have a second one of? Come on. So that's good. But yeah, there was a lot of little quality of life adjustments. So I'm definitely going to be switching my home game to the new version once that's released. No rules for Draining the Lake, Gina B. No rules. I'm sorry. They still didn't make it in. I think I have beaten up Ron enough for that, but that's fine. Everyone knows it exists, and I'm sure you and other GMs are definitely talented enough to figure out how that works. So. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining us on No Direction to talk about the Knights of Lastwall preview. I'm Vanessa Hoskins.
And I'm Luis Loza.
And if you want to find the path, you need no direction.